So, welcome to the Wonka project, which is a rules engine for the Ethereum platform. And you might ask, what exactly is a rules engine? And that's a good question. So, the point of this video is to basically give you a description of what a rules engine is and how it looks in this case. So, for those of you who have not been in the enterprise side of things, a rules engine is a piece of software that you can feed some markup that describes business rules, and it can then validate data and or it can set data in other systems. It's basically a way of encapsulating functionality into something more generic so that you can then execute that functionality over and over again by just supplying some sort of indication in a language, especially a DSL. And to give you a basic idea of what that may look like from a higher perspective, uh, this is a diagram that gives you a brief overview of what a rules engine does. So, in order to actually use this piece of software, a rules engine, you need to define data points. These data points are basically they indicate what you're examining, what you want to perform your functionality on. Let's say you wanted to look at the price of an item. You would define that price attribute in here in this collection of metadata. Uh, you would also need the rules. Basically, this is the language that refers to these attributes. So let's say you have a rule that says, I would want to make sure that a price is above zero. You would write that out here, but you would refer to that attribute being the price. And once you've set these all up and then you feed them into the rules engine, it's ready to run. And in this case, let's assume that a record of data, including the price, is submitted to the rules engine. It'll execute everything that you've written beforehand, all of the checks, including the one for a price, and then it will, in this case, possibly, not always, spit out an altered data record, meaning if you had an examination of a price and you wanted to set something like a flag, you could then do that. But more importantly, for many people, it's just a way to validate, and that's what this would be. So the rules engine would spit out the potentially altered data record, and a report that indicates what happened, what failed, if the price was not supposed to be below zero or equal to zero. It would say here, oh no, you've encountered something invalid. You should do something. So that's what a rules engine does on an abstract level. And in this case, for the Wonka project, the rules engine actually, from a higher perspective, looks like this. Um, and basically, this is just a more detailed view of a rules engine, but in this case, our project. So, as before, we were talking about you needed two main components. You needed the rules to then be parsed and to then form data structures that indicate the rule tree. And like we said before, you need a data domain. These are like price, and this is the rule that the price has to be above zero. And you'll find these two here. But in the case of the Ethereum platform, we need more information. We need to know where contracts are located, where the address of them are, the methods, and we also have something called a registry, which is explained in another tutorial or another video, and that'll actually explain, or talk about something else that's an extra layer. But anyway, you need the first two which we had mentioned beforehand, and then these two others. And this goes into a .NET framework, which is the Wonka.NET side of things. And once it has all of the data structures populated, it will then use an Ethereum, which is a bridge between .NET and the Ethereum platform, to then pipe all of this information into the Ethereum node. And on the Ethereum side of things, there's a contract that belongs as part of the project that actually is the Solidity version of the .NET rules engine. So they kind of mirror each other. And this data, especially the rule tree and the domain data, all gets put inside into this contract that's running. And this contract can make use of other contracts, and that can be explained in another tutorial in the next one. But just as a quick side note, it can basically call other contracts as it goes through this rule tree. That functionality exists. And of course, there's this registry contract, but that's for later. Uh, in any case, if you do have a record to then validate and or you want to actually change data, you would also use this .NET framework to then call once again Ethereum, which again is the bridge between the .NET and Ethereum worlds, and then it will then further that call or relay that call into the Wonka Engine contract that's running on the Ethereum node. And that's basically what's going on a high level. In later tutorials, especially the next one, we'll actually show an example so you can kind of see the XML and you can see the .NET, the C# code. And even further on later ones, we'll drill down more. But this gives basically a very high overview of what's going on, what a rules engine is in the abstract, and then what one looks like once it's implemented, which is what we see in this diagram. And in further tutorials, I hope to see you later. Thank you.